Good morning and happy day to you. Welcome to the Fear to Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Deb. Listen, if you are new to this channel for the first time, like, subscribe, set your notifications, send a comment. Let me know how this content is inspiring you. And if you are a returning champion, thank you so much. Today, we are talking about healing families and dealing with the complexities that families experience within the system. And guess what? We have a young lady, a millennial, who's coming up, who is living her best life. She's living it fearlessly. Even though she has experienced some things in life, she is living fearlessly today. So, we are talking about families and how we can get back to our roots and go and dig deep and change our lives, how it impacts our mind, body, soul. Listen up. We can't wait to share with you today. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Fear to Freedom Project. I am Dr. Deb, and I have an amazing guest that I am bringing to the stage. She's right here on the stage today, and I'm so happy to bring her here. How are you today, Miss Vondae?
I'm doing well. I love that intro. I was
You
like,
do.
who is this?
Oh, thank you. Everybody says that. I'm so glad to have you, and I want to read your bio. I want people to know just what I know about you. All right.
Okay.
Vondae was raised in the exciting city of Washington, D.C. Vondae experienced a childhood marked by independence and exposure to diverse environments, from navigating public transportation as a solo at a young age to transitioning between different educational systems. Early on, it laid the foundation for her semi-independent spirit. Despite facing the absence of a consistent male figure in her life, she thrived through involvement in various enrichment programs and extracurricular activities, molding her into a resilient and discerning individual that she is today. Her journey has led her through phases of faith, from a superficial engagement with church to a profound relationship, personal relationship with God, shaping her spiritual path and influencing her educational and career choices. After earning a degree in business administration, she pursued further studies, eventually obtaining her master's degree in youth and family studies with plans on her focus is healing families and bridging generational gaps. With a heart burdened by the wounds she carried from childhood to adulthood, Vondae is driven by a mission to facilitate healing through intentional conversations and holistic approaches. Inspired by the concept of Sankofa, she wants to empower individuals to look back, acknowledge their roots, move forward towards a brighter and more fulfilling future. I love that.
Yes.
Yay! That bio is so amazing. And I love that. Thank you for what you're doing, what your mission is. What started your mission? Where did you get that passion from, young lady?
It really grew over like my life. I feel like that's one thing I do feel like has always been engraved in me. Like I didn't have the I couldn't define it as well as I can define it now, but I felt like I always knew the path that I was kind of to be on to take, just based on like how I grew up, my environment, the extracurricular, so being involved, like definitely in school, but then helping my teachers, and then
Mm-hmm.
being involved in youth programs and being like a teacher and then a nonprofit. So I kind of like always stayed on the same path. And that's kind of just how it's like now I have the time like in my master's to really define it and branch it out and really look at what I want to do. And then that's kind of how I found that master's program. Like I
Yep.
wasn't kind of doing that at all. I was figuring out, what did I want to do for my master's? But then I was very intentional. I knew like master's is more focused. So I was like, all right, I need to find the right program. And that just kind of fell in my lap. So it just all worked itself out.
How do you think that I grew up? I was born and raised in DC, and what the audience doesn't know is that I know your mama. Okay, And I know your daddy. And I watched you grow up, and you have blossomed into such an amazing, beautiful flower and light unto this world. And I'm so glad that you have accepted my invitation to come here on my show. So, what do you think? How do you think being reared in DC, in the urban city of Chocolate City,
Yep.
right? How has that shaped you into who you were? How did that give you some independence? Because you have to be a little independent to navigate the city, right?
Oh yeah. I feel like, so looking back, because I kind of always like look back versus looking forward in it. So looking back, I feel like it definitely made me independent. Probably too soon. I would say I went to two elementary schools. So I went to one that was like down the street from my house. And then, so I was able to walk there and walk back home. But then when I transferred elementary schools, I kind of had to go, I had to catch a bus. I had to catch the city bus. And that was in fourth grade. So I'm taking the city bus already at fourth grade. But I had a neighbor, she was down the street and she took the same bus. So she would look after me, like she would be like, all right, come on, like, we walked across the street, we stood at the bus stop together. So, but it started then in fourth grade, like catching a bus by myself, navigating the city. Middle school, I caught the bus. High school, I went across town, uptown, kind of close to Howard University. And I live in Northeast DC, so that's kind of a long way. So I feel like living in a city where you have like metro, you have the bus, you're able to get around. And I mean, safety, I feel like people looked after you. So as long as you do what you're supposed to, you go to school, you come home, you stay out of trouble, you're fine. But it's when you like, you get involved in things you're not supposed to, or you stay
Mhm.
out a little bit too long, you don't come home. That's when I feel like you kind of get involved in what you're not supposed to. But I feel like as a young age, I was pretty like focused on, I went to school, I came home, and I even in high school, middle school, my mom trusted me to go out, hang out with my friends, and come back home. So I feel like, your parents are watching you to see how you navigate the city, because we have city like school buses, but a lot of it is for like special needs children. So even as a young child, it's either your parents are taking you to school, or you have to kind of navigate on your own. And so you're seeing things
Wow.
to and from, so you kind of like, I feel like that's our rites of passage living in DC. Like, it's like, okay, can you do it? Can you make it
Yeah.
home? And if you can't, then you are going to have a curfew. You are going to be like, oh, I can't trust you, so I got to take you to school. Who house you going over? Like, then you get the overprotection. But I think, like, for me, I didn't have that issue. I was pretty trusted. I did what I was supposed to. Went to school, hung out. I was responsible. So I didn't have that issue. But my friends around me, like, there was a lot of like neighborhood beef in DC, different gangs, but I did what I was supposed to. I just went to school, came home, minded my business. And so I feel like that benefited me. And, it was grace and protection, because anything could have happened. But I feel like, you put yourself, you do what you're supposed to do, and you can kind of avoid some of that. But you saw stuff, you saw things that you weren't supposed to see. You did things you weren't supposed to do, sneaking in, sneaking out, just staying up late, but I don't know, I feel like the community that I lived in, like I had friends in my neighborhood, so I felt safe. We were outside, like it didn't feel unsafe where I live. But I know that's just my experience. I know like there were other, like my friends had different experiences growing up. So I'm grateful for the experience that I had. But yes, living in a city, a major city, definitely caused me to grow up fast. And I feel like moving away, like for college, I went to North Carolina. Well, I started in Tallahassee. I went to FAMU my first year. Then I transferred to North Carolina. And even that, like, it's a culture shock. It is not the same living in a major city. And then going for my master's in Colorado, like, I kind of had to slow down and really like look at different places and see how they live. And I couldn't have that city mentality, like always looking over your shoulders, like, somebody watching you, who's walking with you. I feel like that made me more conscious, but kind of like you gotta just relax, and like not everybody is, trying to get at you. So I feel like in some instances that city girl kind of gotta calm down a little bit and really just, embrace life, and and be fearless in some instances. But still, it taught me how to watch, my surroundings, and be smart and be safe,
Of
kind of just
course.
smart. So
Of course. Of course. That's what DC does to you. It grows you up. And yes, there were many eyes watching you. Okay. Your mom grew up there. We all grew up there. I know your grandparents. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and your ancestors were always, your grandparents prayed for you. So you were protected. And we're glad that you made good choices. I
Yeah.
was going to ask you about the shift from FAMU to A&T because that was a shift, right? What
Yeah.
prompted that shift?
So when I went to, I was so stoked about FAMU because I knew that I wanted to do business. So FAMU had, I was doing business administration, but I just felt like I knew for me, I knew I always wanted to kind of start my own like nonprofit or some kind of business. So FAMU was great at that though. Like it was my history teacher in high school. She actually introduced me to FAMU and told me that they had a good business school. So I was like, okay, and like they really promote you to get into a good like a business, like a job in corporate America. But I think that I knew that that wasn't my focus. However, I was like, okay, this is a great school, a great business school, and I'll do whatever I'll make it through. But it wasn't that it was rigorous. It really prepared you for corporate. However, it was my social life that really kind of made me want to transfer. So as a freshman, I'm excited about being in college. And they're just that year, unfortunately, FAMU went through a lot. Just with the school spirit, they went through a lot with the hazing incident. And so there wasn't a lot of things that we could do as freshmen. They were kind of just going through a lot of legal stuff and just trying to lay low. So unfortunately, my first year there, I was like, okay, I'm going to class and I'm going back to my room. And my freshman, I kind of did things backwards. My freshman, sophomore year, I wasn't into partying too much. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? I want to get involved. I want to do things. But like I said, the school spirit kind of was down that year specifically. So I was just like, it just wasn't what I was expecting from my freshman year. And so A&T was actually my second option out of high school. So A&T was still pretty up there. And then Central was my third option. So I navigated my freshman year. Like I made it work. I had family in Tampa. So I was able to,
Yeah.
go down there to my uncle's house for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
But just, I think the culture of Florida, and then just, I didn't get that experience socially that I was looking for. And
Mhm.
A&T, I had a couple of friends that went there. And so I was hearing things and just seeing things. So I said, you know what? I'm a transfer. And I know not a lot of people, I would say specifically, I remember one person that really was like, what do you mean you're transferring? Like, and I was like, that's fine. You don't have to support me, but I'm going to do the work I have to do it. So I did all my paperwork and I got accepted. I packed up my dorm and we shipped stuff back. Like I figured it out because I was like, I want
Yes.
what I want to do. So I'm
Mhm.
going to do it. So I did it. I went and it was honestly it was a whole 380, not 380, 180. I got involved. I started doing things that I enjoy doing. And I stayed in the school of business, but I changed from administration to management entrepreneurship. So it was just a better change
Mhm.
for me, a better
Mhm.
switch. And
Good for
actually,
you.
yeah, my cousin was at
Good
FAMU
for
too.
you for making a decision that where the decision that helped you to breathe more freely in the space that you were in. Good for you
Yeah.
for not allowing someone to influence your decision that you knew it was already inside of you. You were already sure about it. So you know what that is? That is following the voice of God,
Yes.
God in you, which leads me to throughout your entire bio, you reference God. You talk about your personal relationship with God. Okay. So you said you had a superficial relationship with church and it then shifted into your personal relationship with God. Explain that.
Yeah, so I grew up going to church. Like, if it wasn't like my grandfather didn't go too much, but like my aunts, my cousin, like they would come and pick us up, me and my brother, to go to church, and it was a Baptist church. So I remember just getting dressed up, going to church, sitting there for long hours, and then we started going with my mom, and through the program that she went through. So they had like a church service too, and I enjoyed that because then I started singing in the choir. So and I started dancing in church. So then, I kind of was like, okay, I like this because I can be active. I can do things. I like it. And then I was like, oh, this is like church family. Like I'm starting to see some similar faces and build relationships. But still, I was like, I was a child and I didn't really understand. Like, I knew what going to church meant. I enjoyed sitting and listening to preachers preach. I knew that. that I did enjoy that, and I enjoyed worship, I enjoyed singing, I enjoyed dancing. Those things were innate in me. However, it just still wasn't like my personal relationship. Like after I left church, it was just like, oh, okay, on to my week, like going to school. It wasn't much else to it. But then when we went to a different church, we started going to a different church, and I feel like they were just more intentional about like you're building your own personal relationship. I was older and I was starting to ask questions and just really, dive into my relationship with God and what that meant. Like it was my decision to go. And even in college, like once I left home and I went to college, I continued going to church. Like then it became my choice to get up on Sunday mornings and go to church. So whether that was, a lot of schools have like church vans that would come and pick us up from the university and take us to church and drop us off. So I was grateful for that. But that's kind of what I meant. So like growing up, when
Yeah.
you're younger, you just kind of go. Your parents say go, you get up, go, you get dressed and come home. But you don't really know why you're doing it, what that means, what's God. You don't know what any of that is. And so as I got older, I feel like it just changed. It became personal for
Yes.
me. And I would say really in college, because even as I got older, high school, like I knew what God was. I enjoyed listening to the word. I would journal and I would like, I knew that was kind of, ooh, I like this. And I like how they can
Mhm.
read a passage and deliver it and share it. Like I knew that I liked that. But then in college, it became personal. Like, well, what does this mean? How can I put what I learned, what I was taught? How can I put it into action in my own life? How can I share the word? So I began like taking my notes, and then after church, I would make a post, but I would be sharing like what I learned. So I knew like, okay, this is interesting to me, and people enjoyed it. Like I would get feedback even back then, on just sharing that. And so then when I came back home from college, it really was my decision to go and to make it my own. And I took a class that was how to study the Bible for yourself. And that's when I feel like it really became real. And I got rebaptized because I'm like, okay, this is my choice now. This is my decision, and what does this mean for me? And so that's kind of really where it blossomed, and it became my own. And then I got
Mhm.
involved in
Mhm.
a few classes at my church. One is like an alpha class, was like a beginning Christian kind of, that will introduce you to the basic principles. And
Mhm.
then I got into a class called Queen Esther, where there was young ladies at my own age, and we had an accountability partner, and we studied
Good.
different women of the Bible. So it became deeper. And then my master's took me to seminary school. And so that was a whole different experience, because now I'm like studying the Bible. Like it's not a
Mhm.
choice. Like I had to read it to write my papers and do my
Mhm.
projects. And
Yeah.
that was an even different experience in my relationship with God and the Bible, and just what it means to be a Christian. And I went on a whole journey with that. And so
Mhm.
we can probably dive into what that meant too. But it's been like an up and down experience. And I feel like in my master's, I studied youth and family studies. And so it really showed me that when you are young, you have to kind of define your faith for yourself. You kind of go through different formations through your childhood, through your adolescence, even through your adulthood. You're going through different phases of what religion means, what does God mean, what does spirituality mean. So I appreciate just learning that, but also reflecting on my own life and realizing, yeah, I've went through a lot of different journeys of, just what religion means, what my relationship with God means. And now I can't say it's personal, it's my own. And I still, I have questions. And I think people should stay curious, and people should just, yeah, like I don't think it's a box for me. It's a whole bunch of, it's like spaghetti
I'm
noodles.
glad to hear. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that because you know why? Because God is not in a box.
no.
God is everything that you see, everywhere that you look. There is God. That is the
Mhm.
universe. So
Yeah.
we cannot put God in a box.
Mm-mm.
And sometimes we have been kind of trained that way or conditioned that way. So I'm very proud of you as a young person for reconditioning your mind. It is your mind. It is a mind that God has given you. I'm so proud of you. So, when you were in seminary, of course, you studied family and child services. And I have spent my entire career working with children and families. And so, I'm very happy to hear that. But I want to know not but. However, I want to know what how did you know, like how did you discern that that was your mission? Because yeah, you have to have a type of discerning spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God speaks to you and you seem very stable. So how did you discern that?
Ooh, that's like, I feel like a loaded question, because I feel like if you always just ground yourself and just and ask God, like, okay, what am I to do next? Like after my undergrad, I was very I was just like, okay, I'm finished. Now what? And I was patient with that as I was going through my classes at church, and just asking God, okay, what next? I knew I wanted to do something with my master, so I was looking into like nonprofit management master programs. I was looking at culinary school because I knew some of my interests and I knew the direction I wanted to go. But I would say just praying and waiting for that answer kind of like helped me wait and kind of figure it out. So as I was navigating, okay, what do I do next? And I'm in my classes and I'm praying, and then this advertisement came up at church. And this is why you gotta be paying attention, and the signs are all around you. Like it's not always gonna be like this loud voice that say, boom, do it.
Yeah.
No, like you have to pay
Yes.
attention. Like God can speak through anything, anybody. So that's like discernment. That's real true discernment and wisdom. And you have to be still and you have to be paying attention to really hear and see those things. So there was an advertisement that came on for Denver Seminary. And I was like, what? Okay. And I kept seeing it. I kept seeing it. So I'm like, let me ask, let me figure out what this is, because this seems interesting. So I inquired about it and I found like the contact information and I reached out. And so I met with them and I asked, like, well, what are my options? And that's when they told me that there was a program, but it was only in Denver, and it was the Youth and Family Studies program. And I was like, oh, this is like exactly what I want to focus on. So then it was like, oh, it's in Denver though. So I said, okay, well, I'll apply for the leadership program, and I'll see if I can like add some, extra classes that maybe give me like a concentration in that. So I initially applied for the leadership program. It was a Master of Arts in Leadership. And then my coworker, she was like, why don't you consider going to Denver? Like your passion is young people. And honestly, it wasn't even a thought in my mind. And when she asked me that planted like a little seed. And literally I drove out of work and I called the school and I was like, what are my options? Like I submitted my application already for the leadership program. What can I do? So she gave me some alternatives. She said you can come and visit and see if you want to come out here. You can start and do your core classes in Maryland, and then you can come over and finish your program classes, or you can just stay in the leadership program. So I went to Denver to visit in April of 2018. And when I got there, everything just I went by myself. So in the city girl, I was like, all right, I'm gonna catch the train. I'm gonna figure it out, because they have a train system, but it's not as vast as the DC Metropolitan metro station. So I got on the train, and this couple gave me their metro card, and I was like, all right, God, you already working it out. Got a free metro card. I'm figuring out how to get around. I made it to the school, and they had like a student, like you could stay in an apartment for the weekend while you visit. So when I got to my room, the doormat was the symbol of the Sankofa. So, like I said, you got to pay attention to the signs because it's there. So I was like, all right, God, you got me. Like, I'm already because only God, like, God knows you and the things that's going to stick out to you and
Yes.
you
Yes.
specifically. So when
Yes.
I saw that doormat, the symbol, I was like, okay. So I went to some classes, I talked to some professors, and I was like, all right, I told him, I was like, if the provisions are made financially and like physically getting me here, I'm coming. Like I'm coming. So it all worked out. And even my 5 years there was a journey. But that's kind of how I decided on that school and that program. But even it wasn't perfect and things happen because it's a
Yeah, of
journey.
course.
But that's how I made it there, and that's how I decided on that school. So I did get accepted into the culinary school, PG, and I still have that desire to
Yeah.
pursue either a culinary certificate or to
Yeah.
go that full route, and some other things that I want to do. But I decided on that because that caused me to move. That was a the bigger choice and decision. And so I packed up and I shipped
And
my car,
got going.
got on that plane, and everything is up from there. Like, and it was up and down, but it's a journey. So
Yes, it is a journey, and you are navigating your journey with a lot of grace and faith and fearlessness. I'm so very proud of you. I really am. You do have to pay attention to the signs. Whenever you put God in a box, then you miss the signs,
mhm.
right? Because you are not thinking that it would come from this place or that it would be on a welcome doormat. So you cannot. And I'm so glad that you are not, keep, God is everything, right?
Mhm.
So you want to help families, and yeah, that's dear to my heart. But what made you want? Why is it so important for you to help families?
Yeah. The family that I grew up in. Like my
That's all of
family,
us.
yeah, it really is. But I think for me, why families? It's my story, but it's my mother's story, it's my sister's story, it's my brother's story, my cousin. Like it's my whole family dynamic. Because growing up in the environment that I grew up in, like my mom has 4 children, and she had all of her children through she did drugs. So she went through a narcotics anonymous program to gain her sobriety. But her last child, my sister Margaret, so coincidentally, we're all 3 years apart from 90 to 99. And so that last child had, I feel like, the most complications through her pregnancy. My sister was born premature with a hole in her heart. But that caused my mom, they took her into CPS, and they were like, if you don't get your life together, you're going to lose your child. Like, she's going to be in the system forever. So that caused my mom to go into that program and to get clean. And that's kind of how we got into that church program, like my first church when I was dancing and singing. But after 2 years, my mom got my sister back. And so just looking back, my first job when I came back from college, I worked at a place called Progressive Life Center. So I did business. So I had no understanding of the brain, the mind. But that job had a lot of social workers and counselors. And so some of our trainings, we had a training that was specifically about the brain. And I said, if I go for my PhD, I'm gonna study the brain. Even I learned that in my master's, but I go down rabbit trails, but I'm gonna go back to it. So in the training, they were talking about the brain and just how, like, your conditions, how it can affect your development. And I swear, in that training, my mind went straight to my sister. Like, just we all went through similar conditions in which we were, in our mother's wombs, but then the environment once you're out of the womb and the conditions of your environment growing up, like, my grandfather and my grandmother helped with me and my older sibling, but my sister, she went into the system, and then she came back, and I mean, it got better, but just the conditions that she went through, being a preemie, having a whole lot, having surgeries, and just her learning development, like, it really made me look like, wow, like learning about the brain. And like I said, I didn't study that in undergrad. So I had I didn't know how it really can impact you. And then when I read a book about the body keeps the score in my master's program, and just all of the conditions from, the affection you get as a baby, and all of that is important to your development. And so it really kind of put the pieces together of why, like, and then I got into teaching children. And I always knew, like, okay, youth, I'm gonna go for the youth, because I knew what that meant for me, being in youth programs, because I didn't have everything. Like, my mom was a single mom, she worked hard, so I really gravitated toward, like, my teachers and these extracurricular programs, college bound, that really prepared me for college. Like, it wasn't just my own doing. Like, there were people, I had mentors, I had teachers, I had people helping me, but I know, like, that made a difference in my life. But not every young person has that. And so it's all these different things. And I'm working on writing a book. And I'm gonna share the title. It's called The Covering. But it kind of goes to what my passion is about families, because children,
Mhm.
babies should be protected, they should be covered, and they should be covered by, if it's not their biological parents, if that's another family member. Like, I had other family members step in and help take care of me. If that's neighbors, like, I had neighbors looking after us. Like,
Mhm.
if it's teachers, it takes a village. And so that's kind of like my passion about families, because it's not always like you come into this world one way, but that doesn't have to be you, that doesn't make you. You can blossom and grow and explore and open yourself up, but if you don't get the help, if you don't know what's going on in your mind. And so like my sister, like I was really, when I learned about the brain, I'm even telling her, like, you have to now take action and initiative to learn like what is going on with you. And we all have to do that through therapy. We have to learn like what's going on, because it's chemical too, as much as it's physical. It's a lot of things. It's spiritual, it's chemicals, it's all of those things. We
Yeah,
are so many parts and pieces. And
yeah,
so like, why you have this spiritual and you believe, oh, there's God, but you also have a physical body, and we're having a physical experience. And so there's so many things, and I feel like putting all that together is just, it's important. And that's kind of like the book that I'm writing, and why I'm passionate about families and just healing, because it's kind of like why this is Sankofa too, because the bird is kind of like looking back. And even
yes.
though a lot of people don't want to look back, you have to look back to know where you come from. You don't have to stay there, but it's a reference, because if you don't know where you come from, it's kind of hard like to navigate life and know like, well, why am I this way? Why do I do certain things? But if and we those are hard conversations, because say you were adopted, you may not know those things. So but the environment and maybe in which you were raised in, like if you can find those bits and pieces, any little bit of information will help you kind of put some missing pieces together. Because so there's a Frederick Douglass quote that says it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. And like as an adult, I'm like, we're broken, like we need help. And so I'm like, we got to stop bringing these babies in the world. We gotta stop bringing these babies into these conditions that we aren't healing for ourselves. Like, we gotta realize we are our environments. We don't have to continue to be it. But if we don't know any better, we're gonna continue the cycle. So it's like we gotta stop it. We gotta learn what's going on in our lives and try to, create just a better environment for the next generation. Even if it's not your own seed, just your, like I said, community. I'm big on like community too, because it does take a village. So it's kind of a lot, but to me, it all comes back full circle for real. Because I'm like, if we can help the children, like we're already adults, we're already navigating life. But if we can help children, like not go through some of the things we went through and experience, like I think our world and our society and our communities can be better. But everybody, I feel like we is navigating life on their own. And I wish, it can be better. And it's not everybody, but in some communities do look out, and different cultures have a different system and village, just mentality and culture. But I feel like, especially like in DC, being so independent, you're just navigating life on your own. And you do need that help and that guidance. And so that's kind of my push too, of also intersectionality, of bringing in multi-generational, like we need to mix in, we need to pull each other up and talk to the young people. Because I mean, I was also figuring it out, but I kind of had that wisdom in me that was just ingrained in me, where I gravitated toward older people. And I asked for what I needed. But that's not, everybody's done, they don't do that. So
Well, God has designed it
oh
that
yeah.
way. God has designed it in a way that we really need each other. And I always say that we are here walking each other home. We're not alone.
Oh
You're
yeah,
never
I love that
alone.
quote. Hmm.
Absolutely. You're never alone. And it does take a village, but there is an absolute entire spiritual world where your ancestors reside, and they are always with you. So
Yeah.
we are never alone. Absolutely not. And I'm so glad, though, we do have to figure this thing out. Life has to be figured out. It's all designed for us by the infinite intelligence from which we
Hmm.
came.
Yeah.
You are figuring it out. You're doing a great job in figuring it out. So you're answering all of my questions actually before I even get to the questions. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
still
that.
figuring it out though. I'm
Yes,
back home,
well,
and
we're
it's
gonna
like I said,
continue
it's
to do
full
that.
circle. It is
Yes,
full
yes, yes.
circle.
You will continue. I mean, we're
Mhm.
always getting there. We're
Yeah.
always on our way.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're always getting there. You're doing a great job at that. Now, as a young person, and even, yeah, this is just, we're talking about young people today, and I have some other young people that will be coming to the show. Sometimes, everybody, we are really caught up. on what's outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
We look outside of ourselves to satiate our desires, to calm our fears, to try to ease our pain. What are you doing? What approach are you taking to foster self love, self
Mhm.
care, self protection? Because those habits and practices are very important when you're talking about serving families and
Yes.
serving children who have intense needs. What are you doing to take care of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like I really didn't tap into my true self and essence until I went to Colorado, and even just experiencing God in a different way. Like I became this whole outdoor nature girl, and I hate bugs. Like I do not like bugs at all. My friends will tell you that. But just something about being in Colorado, the mountains, and just being outdoors and connecting with nature. And I brought my dog out there, and we would go on walks, and I went on hikes, and I was in the water, paddleboarding, like things that I just would not have ever done.
Yeah.
Not just mostly because I don't like the bugs, but just being out there, I feel like I really became that sunflower that was always within me. But I didn't know, like I knew the fierceness and the fearlessness that was in me, but I really didn't. It really came together in Colorado, just being independent and taking that leap of faith and stepping out there. And I didn't know anybody there, so it took that leap, and then the independence, and just meeting people. But I would say 2020 was a really, really hard year for me. And I know it
Mhm.
was hard for everybody, but starting like in March, but mine started in January, and I lost three people back to back in 1 week. And so that really caused me to go into a depression. I didn't know that until the end of the year. But then on top of that, it was COVID. We all were in the house. I was living alone. And just things started to pile on. The racial tension in the summer, and just my own things that I was battling with being in Colorado and not feeling supported. And then I was navigating my master's program. Like I was really just going and going and going, but also just like and coping with certain things and not really taking care of myself. And I got a health diagnosis. So it was like things were piling on. And so yeah, I think it was, I want to say in November of 2020. Yes, because I write about this in my book. I would took a trip to, it was Houston. I took a trip to Houston, and so I met up with some of my close girlfriends. And one night after we came home, um, we had energy, so I was like, oh, let me go outside. This is my nature talk. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm outside walking. So me and my friend, we went on a walk, and I just broke down. I was like, I'm struggling. I'm going through it. Like I might look good. I'm out here having a good time. The gram don't know, but I'm really struggling. Like I'm really barely making it. And I just poured my heart out. And there was this tree we came apart, this park of trees, and it was just really beautiful. And I just cried and danced, and I was like, I need to get into therapy. And so I started therapy in December of 2020. And I've had a couple of rounds of therapy. My first round of therapy was just about, I was grieving. I was grieving death. I was grieving life. We were grieving a lot of things. And it started, with the deaths that I experienced, but COVID, the racial stuff, the feeling unsupported, just everything, the school, everything, finances, it was piling up on me. And so it's kind of like when your bucket is so full, you don't empty it out, any little thing will tip it over. And so that actually was probably my third overflow where I just break down crying just by this little thing that's just, so that happened. I got into therapy, and I would say from there, that's really where it started. It was therapy, it was getting outdoors, it was
Mhm. Oh, good.
dancing and singing, like
Yes.
it was all of that, writing, journaling, because my therapist was saying you can really only empty your mind through writing and crying, the different sides of the brain and how they kind of work. because if not, you're gonna overflow. So you got to empty out your bucket continuously. And so it's really about having community, having people you can trust, getting into therapy, doing self-care things. I'm a foodie, so I love to eat. I was doing that. But it's been an adjustment. Even coming home, I feel like I went through like just a season of just disappointment because of like expectations, friendship, family.
Yeah.
Like coming back, it hasn't been easy necessarily, but I would say you have to continuously
Yes.
and go within and figure
Yes.
and revision what is this,
Yes.
like what is my purpose being back, and just kind of I say it's a difference between like isolation and
Yes.
what's the other one, solitude. You need moments of solitude, and so I look at those moments as moments of solitude to really go back in and figure out, okay, what do I need to do, what is this season about, like what do I need to focus on. And so I think just having those moments too, because it's not always, other people. Yes, we get disappointed, but it's really sharing what you need. And I think that's important too, is just with friendships and family,
Hmm.
like setting boundaries. As you get
Yes.
older, it's not easy.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. Yes, you're saying all the right things. Set those boundaries. Know the difference between isolation and being in your own cocoon for your own self love and healing. No,
Yes.
isolation doesn't work. I am so proud of you. I don't know what to do. See,
But
you
yeah,
are
it's
using the right words and you are having the right practices. And this is what's going to keep you going because we do live in a world where there's so much going on, so much outside of ourselves, and it impacts our mood and impacts how we
Mhm.
feel. We're empaths. We have compassion for the world and humanity. And so you are doing a great job at practicing to go within. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you. This makes me so happy. It does. This
Yeah.
is what I've always done in my life to help people to get to that point. So we're running out of time, and I am going to ask you just a couple more questions. So, what advice would you give to someone, young, old, it doesn't matter, that's on their journey of self discovery and healing, also with pursuing their passion and their dream at the same time, because we have to do that simultaneously because we never stop healing, right? We
Mhm.
never stop self-discovery. So what advice would you give to somebody on the same journey or starting? Maybe they are afraid right now and they see this podcast and they say, you know what, I can do it. What would
Oh,
you say?
that
Yeah.
thought is just amazing to me. Like that I could just talk to somebody and inspire
I-
somebody. Yes, I would say right, 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 right. Continue to have like a vision board, continue to self-reflect, like have keepsake things that remind you of where you came from, where you're going, write to yourself, have a little box and put things that are special to you. But definitely vision boards are important. I think in my life, my adult life, I've made at least 3 of them. But then one year I didn't do another one because it's like to me it's not. I don't feel the need to do one every year because sometimes you're still in that journey. But even dissecting, like going deeper within that vision board and writing down what it means to you. Keep a journal. Keep a journal. Right, and just remain true to you. Like for me, I see you just posted the Instagram, but for me, I had 2 different Instagrams, and I decided to make this all things be Dizzle because again, like that box and just being superficial, like social media, you get a snap. But for me, my new page is really like everything. It's all things me. And you're gonna get a variety of who I am, but I think that's how you can really look at who you are, who you grew to be. I write a lot. I write a lot in my notes, like my Instagram post, I write a paragraph quick because you really don't know who you're impacting. But I would say have friends that you trust. As you get older, it's gonna grow. It's gonna get smaller.
Yes.
Speak your truth. Speak your mind. Let people go. But
Mm,
stay grounded. I
yeah.
would say stay grounded and always just like be in a self reflection type of just demeanor.
Yeah.
Take time for you. Take time to rest. Like we're always going and moving, but I think rest is very, very important. And just having, I desire a mentor actually now. Now that I'm in a different phase of life, I had mentors through high
Yes.
school. But I think now I'm in a phase where I could definitely benefit from having a mentor in this next phase of my life. Like we don't know everything. And
Mhm.
so I am seeking that now, a mentor. I think also in my job, I learned, a supervisor told me you should always have somebody over you. You should always have somebody that's on the same level as you. And then you should always have somebody that you're pouring into on those
Mhm.
three levels. And so I keep that in my mind. I just think it's always like you're giving, but you're somebody that's here and then somebody
Mhm.
that's covering you. I think if you always have somebody, if you always can do those three levels,
Yeah.
then it will all come to you, because you'll be, when you pour out to people, it comes back. When you give and you share your truth and authenticity, like you're being authentic to who you are, the good, the bad, and the indifferent, it's
Mhm.
always gonna come back good. You're always gonna get what you need. So I think just being true to you, but it comes in phases. Like just be
Yeah.
graceful with yourself, be forgiving.
Mhm.
And as you age, I felt like going into 30, I felt 30 at 27. I felt it coming, and now I see what it feels like, and I'm just excited for this new decade and what that means for me. Because I'm like, let's just keep going. But
Well, that was my question. That's the last question I always ask everybody. You are just so on it. I
sorry.
mean, no, no, no. Don't you be ever sorry. There is no sorry. You are so on it because I was going to ask you. So, what are you most excited about in life right now? Before you,
Before
yeah.
I answer it, I think writing this book, getting this book out, and I feel like sometimes you can block your own blessings by being in the way, and I really need to get out my way by getting this out, because there's so much more, and I feel like, that was part of me coming home, was to have that space to write. But I'm navigating work. I'm navigating being a 30-year-old, being back home, like so. But you have to remember what your purpose and your mission is in that season. And so it is, I'm in a transition where I'm like, all right, pull it back. Like, you had your fun, but now I got to get this book out. So I'm excited about getting this book written and published. And I'm also working on herbal tea blends to start selling.
Oh,
So yeah, it's really, it's coming together. I have some blends, but it really came from just working through my own health issues, and the herbs, everything to me is coming from the ground. So I'm like, if I can heal that way by, my herbs, then I will do that. So just getting this book out and getting my herbal tea blends in the market in somebody's body, that will make me happy. But there's so much
that's
more
good.
too that, I want to do. But I know that book and the tea is kind of my focus right now. So it's just remembering your why through it all, and just refocusing on that. So that's what I'm excited about.
I am excited for you. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
You are such a joy. And you know what? I really thank you. I honor you. Thank you so much for coming to the Fear to Freedom Project. Many have been invited. You have accepted the invitation and you came to share your space and time with me. I am so very proud of you. I really am. You are doing it very big in this world. And I just want you to know that your creator is so proud of you. You are serving humanity in such an expansive way because of how you feel inside. You're clearing things up inside. And once we go within, we will never be able to go without. You see what I'm saying? So thank you so much. I love you. I appreciate
Thank
you coming.
you. I want to say thank you for having this space. And like you said, you've seen me since I was a child. And so I was like, of course, I'm going to accept. And,
Thank
whatever is going to come of it is going to come. But thank you for affirming that. And like we need this reassurance and confirmation that we are just on the path and doing the work, because it's not easy. And so this
you.
really encourages me too, just to continue doing what I'm doing and just
Yes,
sharing my story. So I thank you for having this space and just bringing
you
people
are
on
welcome.
to do that. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, you know what? You heard it here at the Fear to Freedom Project. We have young people out here in the world who are serving humanity in such an amazing and expansive way. They're talking about their passions and their dreams, and you heard it right here. And I am just so happy. If you are new to this channel, thank you. Thank you for coming. Like, share, subscribe, set your notification. If you are a returning champion, once again, I love you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you. And peace and love.